In today's video, we'll take a look at a case for your Raspberry Pi 5 that looks like a tiny high-end PC. The number of features built into this case are impressive, including a built-in NVMe M.2 SSD slot, an OLED status display panel, RGB lighting effects, advanced tower cooling system, and much more. In this video, we'll unbox it, fully assemble it, and install PiOS Desktop and configure the Pironman software to allow you to fully customize the case how you want it. To accomplish all this, the video is a bit long, so I'll place chapter markers below to make it easier to skip over those things that you already know. While I marked this video as sponsored because Sunfounder shipped me this unit, I wasn't paid for this video and all opinions are my own. Let's get started. I'm John, and welcome to Wagner's Tech Talk. I would like to express a big thank you to Sunfounder for sending over the Pironman 5 for us to check out on the channel. This isn't your average Pi 5 case. It has a lot of cool features. Some of the highlights are a nearly 1-inch OLED status display, easy GPIO access, NVMe M.2 SSD support, cool lighting effects, infrared receiver, and an impressive cooling system. This case is designed for the Raspberry Pi 5, so you'll need one of those along with a power supply. No power supply is included with this kit. You may also want an NVMe drive, which is a lot faster than the micro SD card, but of course you can use either one. I'll place links in the video description below for everything I use here. The first thing you're greeted with is an instruction guide that has about 28 steps. Don't worry, as long as you only focus on each one step by step, you can complete the installation within an hour. It's actually a fun and easy setup process, but I get it, it looks like a lot. There are a number of brown panels included in the box. You'll want to peel off the backing from the plexiglass on both sides, like this. I'm going to fly through most of the parts in the package. We'll see them all again shortly. There are 2 fans, a tower cooler, standoffs, screws, thermal pads, and this is something I wasn't expecting, a USB HDMI adapter board that expands the micro HDMI ports to 2 full-size HDMI ports. That's definitely a welcome surprise. There's also this Pi power switch converter, and another small board which acts as a micro SD extender. This one is spring-loaded, which is a nice touch. The NVMe PIP board, which allows installing the NVMe drive into the case of various sizes, including the 2230, 2242, 2260, and 2280 drives. This kit also includes the mounting screws for the NVMe drive, which we'll take a look at in a bit. This board is the GPIO extender, which will allow access to the GPIO pins on the Pi 5, a screwdriver and wrench to help with the installation, 2 metal plates. Again, the Pi 5 is not included, so make sure you have one available before starting. If you're not familiar with the Pi 5, I'll place a link above to a video that will provide more information about it. However, you'll use the components from this kit for the assembly for the setup process. Now let's assemble the Pironman 5. Step 1 is super easy. We just need to remove these 2 screws to separate plate A and plate B. For step 2, you'll need the M.2.5x4 screws, M.2.5x6 standoffs, as well as the M.2.5x5 and M.2.5x8 standoffs. Insert the screws from the back and tighten the 2 M.2.5x6 standoffs. Repeat the same at this location with the M.2.5x8 standoffs, and once again with the M.2.5x5 standoffs. Make sure all the screws and the standoffs are good and tight. For step 3, simply take your Pi 5 and insert the micro SD extender into the micro SD card slot on the Pi 5. For step 4, simply plug in the USB HDMI adapter into the ports on the side of the Raspberry Pi 5. For step 5, insert the CR1220 button battery into the USB HDMI adapter board. In step 6, take the 4-pin header and install it to the 4 pins nearest the button battery. Step 7 is simple. Just take the 2-pin wire and connect it between the white connector near the button battery and the battery connector on the Pi 5 labeled BAT. For step 8, raise up on the black latch of the PCIe connector very gently, located right above the microSD slot. Then insert the FPC cable with the black end facing outward. Then press down on the black latch to lock the FPC cable into place. In step 9, take the Pi assembly and insert the microSD adapter into the slot on the case. Using 4 M.2 by 18 plus 4 standoffs, insert them into the via holes towards the bottom of the case, but don't tighten them down too much or it'll make inserting the 2 additional screws more difficult. Now insert the 2 M.2 by 4 screws near the via holes closest to the GPIO header pins. Now you can tighten everything down, including the screws and standoffs, using the included wrench. For step 10, simply remove the nut from the power switch. Slide the connector and wires through the front of the case through the round hole and reinstall the nut. Then, using the included wrench, tighten it firmly. In step 11, we'll install the thermal pads to 3 different locations. You may find it easier to remove the protective backing on the thermal pads using a pair of tweezers to affix it to the chips at these 3 locations on the right. Don't forget to remove the backing on both sides of the thermal pads. I made one minor mistake here that I later corrected, but the thermal pad placed here should have been in this position instead. In step 12, we'll take the tower cooler, remove the cap over the fan connector on the Pi 5, and insert the cable such that the yellow wire is facing outward as you see here. Now align the tower cooler over the holes and push in on both tabs to secure the cooler to the Pi 5. Congratulations, we're at the halfway mark. In step 14, we'll take the power switch converter and position it over the 2 gold standoffs. The 2 long pins will make contact to the Pi 5, then using 2 M.2 by 4 screws, tighten down the power switch converter. Here's a close-up after installation. In step 15, we'll simply plug in the connector going to the power switch that we installed in step 10 to the connector on the power switch converter that we installed in the previous step. If you don't have an NVMe drive to install at this time, you can skip this. If you do, position the NVMe drive into the connector to determine the location where the screw needs to go based on the size of the NVMe drive you have. Now twist the SSD stud into the appropriate hole, press down on the NVMe drive, and insert the SSD screw. In step 16, take the NVMe pip board and raise the latch on the connector. With the black strip at the top, insert the FPC cable, then press down on the latch to lock it into place. In step 17, we'll install the NVMe pip board. Position the board over the standoffs and using 2 M.2 by 4 screws, tighten them into the standoffs. Then take the R2048 rivet, the smaller of the 2 included in your kit, and push it into the hole nearest the tower cooler. For step 18, we'll install the 2 fans. Place the dust cover over the frame and align the holes. In the directions, it's stated to use M3.5 by 8 screws. However, my kit instead had M3.5 by 10 screws. A minor difference from the instructions, but wanted to let you know. Place the screws from the back through the dust cover, then the fan, such that the wires are located towards the middle of the back casing. Then simply tighten a few of the fan screws. Repeat the same for the second fan, then install all 8 fan screws. In step 19, take the acrylic plate E and remove the protective cover from both sides. If there's any foam covers, go ahead and remove them. Using the R3090 rivet, place them through the acrylic plate into the I/O expander at both locations. On step 20, we'll install the OLED screen. Flip the latch at the back of the I/O expander upward. Insert the connector for the OLED screen such that the black strip is facing you. Press the connector latch back down to lock it into place. With step 21, we'll install all 4 fan wires at these locations on the I/O expander board. Take a pair of wires from one of the fans and connect the black wire to the negative and the red wire to the positive. Then repeat the same for the other fan. It should look like this when you're done. Now insert the I/O expander board into the GPIO connector on the Pi 5. In step 23, take the 2 plates, A and B, and line up the holes. Make sure the OLED screen can move freely between the 2 metal plates. In step 24, we'll install 6 screws. From the back, install the 2 M.2.5x4 screws. Then flip the case on its side, and next we'll install 4 additional M.2.5x4 screws in these locations. Now we have most of the case assembled, only 4 more steps and we're done with the assembly. In step 25, flip the OLED screen downward and remove the adhesive backing. Then position the display to fully cover the crosshairs on the metal plate. Give it a gentle press and peel off the screen protector. In step 26, if you haven't done so already, remove all the protective coverings on the front and back of the acrylic panels D and C. We'll use 8 M.2.5x4 screws for this step. Take plate C and notice there is a small opening to the left of the GPIO panel. Make sure you have the panel aligned this way, otherwise you'll run into issues trying to get it installed. Then install 4 of the screws to secure the plate to the frame. Place plate D over the front and secure it with 4 additional M.2.5x4 screws. Insert the light pipe below the micro SD slot at the front of the case. For our final assembly step, number 28, flip the case upside down. Peel off the EVA foam pads and position them along the bottom of the case. The directions show 2, but I went ahead and installed all 4. Pat yourself on the back, you completed the assembly process. I'm equally excited for you. That was one heck of a lot of video edits to demonstrate this. Anyway, in the next segment, we'll discuss the software. Next, we'll cover installing PiOS Desktop to the microSD and the NVMe SSD. The software we'll use to write the PiOS Desktop image to our microSD card is called Raspberry Pi Imager, and it's a free download. Simply open a browser on your computer and visit raspberrypi.com/software. Scroll down a little ways and you'll find download links for the various operating systems such as Windows, Mac OS, Ubuntu x86, and for the Raspberry Pi itself. Select the link for your computer and simply follow the prompts to install Pi Imager to your computer. After launching Pi Imager, be sure to have a micro SD card inserted into your computer. I recommend not having any other USB storage devices connected to avoid selecting the wrong device. That said, click the Choose Device button. Select Raspberry Pi 5 from the list. Now click the Choose OS button. Select Raspberry Pi OS 64-bit. Again, make sure the micro SD card is inserted into your computer and click Choose Storage. Select your micro SD card from the list and click Next. When prompted, if you'd like to apply OS customization settings, select No. If you're sure you've selected the correct storage device, click Yes. Pi Imager will then download and install PiOS Desktop to your micro SD card. Once complete, click Continue and exit out of Pi Imager. You can now safely eject your micro SD card. You will need a keyboard and mouse. I'll plug them into the black USB 2.0 ports at the back. Plug in the HDMI cable to your TV or monitor into the bottom full-size HDMI port. Take the microSD that we just imaged with PiOS Desktop and insert it into the microSD slot on the front of the Pironman 5 case. Now plug in the USB-C power into the port at the back, and the Pironman case will light up and begin booting from the microSD card. I'll transition to the screen capture so you can see things a little better. When Pi Desktop boots up, click Next. Select your country, language, and time zone. Then if you'll be using the English language and a US keyboard, go ahead and check those and click Next. Enter a username and password twice to log into the Pi 5. Select your Wi-Fi network name or SSID and click Next. Enter your Wi-Fi password and click Next. I'll use the default Chromium browser, but if you prefer Firefox, you can select that instead and click Next. Raspberry Pi Connect will allow you to remotely connect to your Pi 5 from any other computer. I have a dedicated video on how to set that up. I'll place a link up above if you'd like to check it out. I'll enable Raspberry Pi Connect and click Next. You'll now be prompted to update the software. I highly recommend that you do, so we'll click Next. This process will take some time, so I'll skip forward. Now click OK and restart to reboot the Pi 5. If you install the NVMe drive to the NVMe pip, you could launch PiImager to write PiOS Desktop or any other operating system to the NVMe drive. However, if you want Pi Desktop on the NVMe and wish to avoid going through all the steps we just performed, here's how. From Accessories, select SD card copier. In the Copy From Device option, select the micro SD card, which should show MMC somewhere in the path. For the Copy To device, select the NVMe drive. Click the Start button. The contents from the micro SD will then be cloned to the NVMe drive. Once done, click OK and exit the app. Select Logout and Shutdown. Once the Pi 5 has shut down and the LED is red, remove the micro SD card, then press the power button. The Pi 5 will now boot directly off the NVMe drive. Now we'll install the Pironman software and I'll show you around. Now we're back in the Pi Desktop, running from the NVMe drive. I've loaded Chromium on the left and browsed to the Pironman page on the Sunfounder website. I'll place a link in the description below to take you there. In addition, I've started a terminal session on the right by clicking the terminal icon on the taskbar. We're all set to configure everything. The first thing we'll do is edit the rpi EEPROM config file and set the power off on halt value to 1. This is to keep the OLED screen and the fans from remaining on after shutdown. To do that, I'll copy the command and paste it into the terminal and press enter. If yours is set for 0, change it to 1, then hold Ctrl plus X to exit, Y and enter to save. I've already made this change in a previous test. Next, we'll download the Pironman code from GitHub. Moving down to step 2, I'll enter the 4 commands listed here. Simply copy and paste each individually into the terminal session and press enter after each command. The installation process will take a little bit, so I'll speed it up. Once installed, you'll then be prompted to reboot for the changes to take effect. Press Y and enter and the Pi will reboot. After the reboot, the case will light up, the fans will begin to spin up, and the OLED display will begin displaying the status, including CPU utilization, the CPU temperature, your local IP address, the amount of RAM in use and available, as well as the same for the storage. On the Sunfounder page, they have information on how to set up the Pironman 5 case with not only PiOS, but also Ubuntu, Kali, Homebridge, Home Assistant, and Batocera. So if you need details on any of those operating systems, it's all available on the site. You can use both terminal commands or a web-based dashboard to control the Pironman 5 case. I'll demonstrate the easiest method, which is using the web-based dashboard. Open a tab and enter localhost 34 001 into the address bar and press enter. From here, you can monitor a number of metrics, including the fan temperature, RPMs, the storage, the total amount of RAM and how much is being used, the network speed, as well as the CPU utilization for all 4 cores. But that's not all. You can click the settings icon in the upper right, and there are a number of adjustments you can make, such as changing the temperature units, the fan mode to various settings, the RGB brightness, as well as the RGB style. Just make your change, click the save button, and they become effective immediately. For example, here's flow, breathing, rainbow. Anyways, you get the idea. On my website, I have a guide dedicated to the Raspberry Pi 5. There is some helpful content there, including videos, mini tutorials, and other links you may appreciate. One in particular are the commands to install and run stress to fully stress all 4 CPU cores to 100%. The active cooler during the same test reached 75.7 degrees. However, with the Pironman case, it was far below that, and in fact, it's the best cooling solution I've used to date. The highest temperature I saw was 60.9 degrees Celsius, but it was typically around the mid to upper 50s most of the time. The Pironman 5 case is an excellent cooling solution for your Raspberry Pi 5. One thing you may be wondering is if it has a safe shutdown mode. It certainly does. If you press the power button once, you'll see the option to shut down the Pi. Press the button again and it will automatically shut down safely. There is so much more we could discuss when it comes to the Pironman 5 case, such as the IR receiver or the battery. I'm thoroughly enjoying what it can do. It's without a doubt the coolest looking case I've seen for the Pi 5 and supports the most features of any case that I've personally used. It's a bit expensive at around $80 US, but it has so many features that will make it a compelling option for many. I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please click the like button to let me know. If you want to see more content like this in the future, please click the subscribe button. And with that, I look forward to talking with you again very soon.